The text came in while I was choosing between whole milk and the kind that pretends to be milk. Send $500 for Nora's checkup. That was it. No greeting, no explanation, just a number, a name, and a quiet demand that cracked something open in my chest before I even knew what it meant. For a second, I didn't move. The grocery store hummed around me, freezers buzzing, a cart clattering somewhere behind my left shoulder, a woman laughing too loudly at the end of the aisle. My 6-year-old daughter, Ellie, was sitting in the cart, swinging her legs and chewing on the plastic corner of the seatbelt like it owed her money. "Mom," she said, "can we get the cereal with the marshmallows?" I stared at the phone in my hand. Not my phone, his. My husband's. I swallowed. My throat felt tight, like I'd just tried to eat something without chewing. "Maybe," I said. My voice sounded fine. Normal. That scared me more than the message. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. I'm good at that. I work with numbers for a living. Numbers don't panic. They wait until you line them up and see what they're actually saying. Nora could be anyone. A coworker's kid, a relative I forgot about, a dog. People name dogs like people now. It's a whole thing. I locked the screen. Then it buzzed again. "Please don't forget. Tomorrow morning." Same name, same thread. My thumb hovered. I didn't want to open it. I knew that if I did, there would be a before and an after, and I wouldn't get to choose which side I lived on anymore. Ellie kicked the cart. "Mom?" I unlocked the phone. There were messages stacked neatly like they'd been waiting. Not frantic, not secretive in a spy movie way. Comfortable. Familiar. "Thank you for last time. I hate asking, but I'm short this month. Anything for you. Anything for you." I felt something go numb. Not my hands, not my legs, something deeper. The place where you store the assumption that your life is basically what you think it is. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought betrayal would feel louder. Instead, my brain started doing inventory. Screenshots, dates, amounts. My thumb moved with muscle memory, tapping and saving, sending the images to myself like I was backing up a file I might need later. Ellie hummed to herself, off-key and happy. The normalcy was almost insulting. I paid for the groceries. I smiled at the cashier. I even said, "You too," when she told me to have a nice day. Autopilot is a hell of a drug. Outside, the cold air hit my face hard enough to sting. It felt good. Real. I loaded the bags into the trunk and buckled Ellie into her seat, my fingers steady now, precise. "Are you mad?" she asked, squinting at me. "No," I said. Another lie. A necessary one. Just thinking. The drive home took 6 minutes. In that time, my mind ran through 1,000 possible conversations and rejected all of them. Yelling wouldn't help. Crying wouldn't help. Asking why was a luxury I couldn't afford yet. When we pulled into our driveway, the house looked exactly the same. White siding, porch light flickering like it always did because Ethan never replaced the bulb. Chalk hearts Ellie had drawn on the steps, already smudged by last night's rain. I carried the groceries inside and set the phone back on the entry table, exactly where it had been. Same angle, same place, like I'd never touched it. In the kitchen, I washed my hands longer than necessary. The water ran hot, steam fogged the window. I checked the clock. Ethan would be home in 20 minutes. And somewhere in those 20 minutes, I understood one thing with terrifying clarity. Whatever Nora's checkup was, my marriage had just failed its own. I didn't confront Ethan right away. That's the part people always question later, like there's a correct reaction time for betrayal. As if pain comes with a stopwatch and instructions. I unpacked the groceries instead. Milk in the fridge. Eggs on the middle shelf. I rearranged them even though they'd been fine where they were. I wiped the counter once. Then again, I noticed a coffee ring near the sink and scrubbed it too hard, like it had personally offended me. Ellie sat on the floor coloring, tongue sticking out in concentration. I watched her longer than necessary, memorizing the shape of her calm. I told myself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Denise always says that. Denise also says men are predictable when they think they're not being watched. I hadn't told her yet. I wasn't ready to hear my own story out loud. The phone sat on the entryway table. I kept glancing at it like it might move on its own. My mind tried to bargain. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe context would save him. Maybe there was a version of this where I was overreacting and later we'd laugh about it in that forced, brittle way couples do when they survive something ugly. I hated myself a little for hoping that. I checked the clock again. 10 minutes. I poured Ellie a glass of juice, spilled some, cleaned it up too fast. My hands felt clumsy now, like they were borrowing someone else's nerves. When the door finally opened, I flinched. Not visibly, just inside. Ethan walked in carrying the cold with him, cheeks pink, hair damp. He smiled when he saw us, that familiar, practiced smile, the one I used to trust. "Hey," he said. "What'd I miss?" I opened my mouth, closed it. "Nothing," I said. Pause. "Can you sit for a minute?" That made him tilt his head, just slightly, like a dog hearing a strange noise. "Sure," he said. He hung up his coat. Took his time. Too much time. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd done homework, paid bills, eaten takeout on paper plates because we were too tired to care. I folded my hands, unfolded them, picked at a dry patch of skin near my thumb until it stung. I started wrong. "Did you have a good day?" I asked. He blinked. "Yeah. Long. Why?" I nodded like that mattered. Like I was collecting data. There was a silence then. Not dramatic, just empty. "I went to the store," I said. "Okay. I took your phone by accident." There it was. His shoulders tightened. Barely. If I hadn't been watching so closely, I might have missed it. "I saw a message," I continued. My voice sounded far away to me. "About $500. He exhaled slow, like he was choosing something. "That?" he said. "That's nothing, just someone who needed help. Someone. Not a name, not a reason." My stomach dropped, even though I'd expected it. "Nora?" I asked. He hesitated, a fraction of a second too long. "Yeah," he said. "She's sick." I waited. He didn't add anything. I thought about Ellie's juice cup, about the coffee ring, about all the tiny things I fix without being asked. I felt stupid, then angry for feeling stupid. "How do you know her?" I asked. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. Defensive. Familiar. "You're making this into something it's not," he said. "Why are you snooping?" There it was. The pivot. The subtle blame shift wrapped in concern. I laughed once. It came out wrong. Too sharp. "I didn't snoop," I said. I picked up the wrong phone. Silence again. This one was heavier. "I sent the money," he said finally. "I was going to tell you." I stared at him, at the man I married, the man who taught our daughter to look both ways before crossing the street. I nodded. "Okay," I said. My calm seemed to confuse him more than yelling would have. Inside, something hardened. I didn't know the full truth yet, but I knew enough. And I knew I wasn't going to beg for it. That night, after Ethan went to bed, I stayed up. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't pace. I didn't cry into a pillow. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open and a mug of tea I forgot to drink. It went cold. I didn't notice. The house made its usual sounds. Pipes ticking, the refrigerator humming. Ellie coughed once in her sleep down the hall, and my body reacted before my thoughts did. I held my breath, then let it out. Slow. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself this was what marriage looked like when it hit a rough patch. People got distracted. People made mistakes. People didn't always mean what their words sounded like on a screen. I almost believed it. I opened my email, closed it, opened it again. My fingers hovered, useless. I hated that part of myself, the part that still wanted permission to be upset. I checked Ethan's phone one more time. I know. I told myself it was just to confirm what I already knew, that I wouldn't go digging, that I'd stop if I felt sick. I didn't stop. There were transfers, small ones, 200 here, 300 there, enough to stay under the radar, enough that I'd probably blamed the grocery bill or inflation or my own bad math. I felt stupid. Then I felt angry for feeling stupid. I wrote the amounts down on a scrap of paper, not because I needed to, because writing made it real, because numbers behave when you put them in a line. I heard Ethan snore softly from the bedroom. The sound used to comfort me. That night, it felt invasive. I thought about waking him, about demanding the truth right then, under the harsh kitchen light, while the world was quiet enough to hear everything break. I didn't. Instead, I opened our banking app. My hands shook. Not enough to stop me. Just enough that I noticed. I scrolled. I checked dates. I matched amounts. I saw my own name next to accounts I didn't remember opening. That was when something inside me shifted. This wasn't just a secret. It was a system. I stood up too fast and had to grab the back of the chair to steady myself. I laughed under my breath. A short, ugly sound. Of course, it wasn't just one thing. I went to the bathroom and splashed water on my face. Looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same. Tired. 33. A woman who paid her bills on time and believed her husband when he said he'd handle things. Idiot, I whispered, not loud enough to wake anyone. Back at the table, I lined the screenshots up in a folder, labeled them by date. I renamed the folder something boring, taxes, because no one ever clicks on taxes. I unplugged my laptop charger, plugged it back in. Pointless. I needed the movement. At 2:14 a.m., I heard Ethan shift in bed. I froze. Listened. Nothing. I exhaled. I thought about Ellie, about school pickup, about the way she still reached for my hand in parking lots without thinking. I thought about how easily this could all turn into something I couldn't control if I played it wrong. I hated that I had to think like that. By the time the sky started to lighten, I had made a decision. Not a big one. Not yet. Just enough of one to get through the next day. I would not confront him again without proof. I would not tell anyone yet. And I would not let him see me hesitate. I closed the laptop, I washed the mug I hadn't used, and I went to bed next to a man who thought he was still winning. The next morning felt borrowed. I woke before the alarm, heart already working like it had somewhere to be. Ethan slept on his back, mouth slightly open, one arm flung out like he owned the space between us. I watched his chest rise and fall, and wondered how long he'd been practicing that kind of innocence. I slipped out of bed without waking him. My foot hit a cold spot on the floor, and I stood there for a second longer than necessary, just to feel something simple. In the kitchen, I made coffee I didn't want. I measured the grounds carefully, then added more. It tasted wrong anyway. Ellie came in rubbing her eyes, hair standing up in every direction. I fixed it with my fingers, smoothing it down like that might smooth everything else too. "You're quiet," she said. "I'm thinking," I told her. She accepted that. Kids do. Adults ask for explanations. After I dropped her at school, I sat in the car longer than needed. The engine idled. I checked my mirrors, adjusted the radio, turned it off. The silence pressed in. I told myself to go home. I didn't. I drove to the bank. Inside, the air smelled like carpet cleaner and patience. I stood in line counting the flecks in the floor, practicing my face. Neutral, polite, normal. When it was my turn, I almost backed out. My mouth opened and closed before words came. "I need to ask about our accounts," I said. "My husband and I." The woman nodded, typed, smiled the kind of smile that doesn't mean anything. As she talked, I felt heat creep up my neck. There were things I hadn't noticed, settings I'd never touched, permissions I hadn't given, but somehow existed. I signed forms with a pen that kept skipping. I apologized for the pen. She told me it was fine. Everything was fine. Back in the car, my hands shook hard enough that I had to wait before turning the key. I stared at the steering wheel, the small crack near the horn I'd always meant to fix. Idiot, I thought again. Quieter this time. I went home and did laundry I didn't need to do. Sorted socks that were already sorted. Found one of Ethan's shirts tucked behind the dryer. I held it for a second. It smelled like his cologne. Familiar. Offensive. I tossed it in the washer and slammed the lid harder than necessary. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I didn't recognize. I stared at it for a long time before opening it. Long enough that my coffee went cold again. It was her. "Marla, hi. I know this is awkward. I just wanted to say I'm sorry if you saw anything that upset you." My chest tightened. She knew. I didn't respond. I read it again and again. The casual tone, the assumption that this was a misunderstanding she could manage. Another message followed. "Ethan cares about you. This isn't what you think." I laughed. It came out sharp, then stopped. Silence after. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. My fingers hovered, unsure whose side they were on. I hated that I even considered answering. Instead, I locked my phone and put it face down. I pressed my palm to it like I could keep her contained. I thought about the $500, about how small it sounded, about how much it actually was, about all the little adjustments I'd made over the years so we'd be comfortable. That afternoon, I withdrew cash. $500. The bills felt heavier than they should have. I smoothed them, folded them, unfolded them. Ethan texted that he'd be home early. I set the money on the kitchen table, and I waited. I heard his car before I saw it. Gravel, tires, the familiar cough of an engine that needed a tune-up. My heart didn't speed up. That surprised me. I stood at the sink pretending to rinse a mug that was already clean, watching the driveway through the window like it might blink first. When Ethan came in, he smiled. Of course he did. He kicked off his boots and bent to kiss my cheek. I leaned back just enough to make it miss. Not dramatic, just accurate. "What's for dinner?" he asked. I nodded toward the table. "Sit." He looked, saw the money, 5 neat bills smoothed flat like they were part of a lesson. He frowned, confused, then annoyed. The order of those emotions mattered. "What's this?" he said. $500, I said. "For Nora's checkup?" Silence. He laughed once, a reflex. "You're serious?" "Yes." I waited. My hands were steady. My stomach was not. I focused on the hum of the refrigerator, on the click of the clock, on not apologizing for my tone. "I was going to explain," he said. "You're blowing this up." I nodded again. "A habit. I do it when I'm listening, and when I'm done listening, it confuses people." "I saw the messages," I said. "I saw the transfers." His jaw tightened. He glanced down the hall toward Ellie's room, like proximity could rearrange facts. "It's not like that," he said. "She needed help. You know me." I did. That was the problem. I slid the money closer to him. The paper whispered against the wood. Small sound, loud meaning. "Take it," I said. "Then get out. Now." He stared at me, waiting for the punchline. When it didn't come, his face changed. Fear, then anger, then something like calculation. "You can't just kick me out," he said. "We're married." I thought about the bank forms, the folder named taxes, the way he'd said anything for you. "I can," I said. "I am." He stood. His chair scraped the floor too hard. He paced once, twice, running a hand through his hair. He tried softer next. "Rowan," he said, "think about Ellie." I did. Constantly. "That's why," I said. He reached for the money, hesitated, took it. The bills bent where his fingers pressed. I hated that I noticed. "You're making a mistake," he said. I shrugged. The movement felt foreign, like borrowing someone else's body. "Pack a bag," I said. "Call a friend. Don't come back tonight." He opened his mouth, closed it. He looked around the kitchen, the magnets, the calendar, the stupid lobster key bowl. Small. He looked at me like I'd changed the locks while he wasn't looking. I walked him to the door. My legs worked. I was proud of that. At the threshold he turned. "This isn't over." I nodded. Again. When the door closed, the house went very quiet. Not peaceful. Just empty. I slid down against the wall and sat on the floor. I laughed once, then pressed my knuckles to my mouth to stop the sound. After a minute, I stood up. I wiped the table where the money had been. I straightened a chair. Then I went to check on my daughter. She slept on her side, breathing slow, one shoe still on. I removed it, set it by the bed, and tucked the blanket under her chin. I stood there counting breaths, blaming myself for all of this, until the hallway light clicked off behind me. I stayed, listening, until my hand stopped shaking and morning felt possible again for this moment. The first night alone stretched longer than it should have. I slept on Ethan's side of the bed by accident. I realized it halfway through the night and didn't move. The sheets still smelled like him. I hated that. I hated that I noticed. At 3:07 a.m., my phone buzzed. I stared at the screen until it went dark again. I didn't need to look to know who it was. I turned the phone face down, then face up, then off. In the morning, I burned the toast, scraped it, ate it anyway. Ellie didn't say anything. She watched me like kids do when they sense something is wrong but don't yet have the words to ask. After school drop-off, I sat in the car again. Same spot, same cracked steering wheel, different air. I called Denise. When she answered, I almost said nothing. My throat closed. I swallowed hard. "He's gone," I said. She didn't ask questions. She never does when the answer might break you. "I'm coming over," she said. I tried to clean before she arrived. Wiped the counters, folded a blanket that didn't need folding. I moved the salt shaker 3 times. It never looked right. Denise walked in, took one look at my face, and set her purse down carefully. Like this was a room with sharp edges. "You okay?" she asked. "No," I said. Then after a beat, "But I will be." She nodded, sat, waited. I told her everything. The messages, the money, the folder named taxes. Saying it out loud made my chest ache in a new way. Less sharp, more real. "You did the right thing," she said. I laughed, quiet, bitter. "Feels late, feels brave," she corrected. After she left, I checked my email. There were 3 messages from Ethan. 1 apology, 1 explanation, 1 threat disguised as concern. "We should talk. You're being unreasonable. This will affect Ellie." I deleted them, then went to the trash, deleted them again, just to be sure. At noon, I met with a lawyer Denise recommended. A small office, beige walls, a box of tissues that had seen better days. I twisted my wedding ring while I talked, realized what I was doing, took it off, put it in my pocket. My hand felt lighter. Wrong. Both. You've already done some things right, the lawyer said, documenting, separating funds. I nodded, like I was back at work. Driving home, guilt crept in. Not about Ethan, about myself, about the years I'd smoothed over things to keep peace, about every time I'd chosen quiet. I pulled into the driveway and just sat there, counting breaths, counting mistakes, counting ways this could still go wrong. Inside, the house felt too big. I opened a window even though it was cold. Needed air. That afternoon, Ellie asked where Daddy was. I crouched in front of her, chose my words carefully, like they were glass. He's staying somewhere else for a bit, I said. Did I do something bad? My heart cracked. No, I said. Too fast. Never. That night, after she slept, I walked through the house turning off lights. I paused at the entryway, looked at the empty bowl where his keys used to be. I left the light on, just in case. The call from Marla came on a Thursday afternoon, the kind of afternoon where nothing dramatic is supposed to happen. I was folding towels, not because they needed folding, because my hands needed a job. My phone rang, unknown number. I let it ring once, twice. I almost didn't answer. I pictured myself missing it on purpose and then telling people later that I never knew she tried. I answered. Rowan? Her voice was softer than I expected. Careful. Like she was approaching a skittish animal. Yes, I said. Then waited. I think we should talk, she said. Woman to woman. I closed my eyes, opened them, counted to 3. About what? I asked. About Ethan, she almost said. I could hear it hovering. Instead, she said, there's been a misunderstanding. Of course there had. I told her I had 5 minutes. I set a timer on the stove even though I could have used my phone. The beep would make it feel official, controlled. She talked fast. Apologies layered with excuses, stress, loneliness, boundaries that blurred. She said my name too many times like it might soften me. I didn't know he was still so involved with you, she said. I laughed, a short breath, not a sound of humor. He lives in my house, I said. Or he did. Silence. Then, I didn't mean to hurt you. That landed wrong, like stepping on a crack. I stared at the towels, white, off-white, one with a loose thread I kept meaning to fix. You didn't mean to stop? I said. That's different. She inhaled sharply. I imagined her somewhere clean and bright, phone tucked under her chin, rehearsing sincerity. There's something else, she said. I think you should know. My stomach tightened. I braced. Literally. One hand on the counter. She told me about the dog. Nora wasn't a child, or a niece, or anything human at all. Nora was a French bulldog with allergies and a taste for expensive care, a detail delivered like a confession. I closed my eyes again, pressed my forehead to the cabinet. It was cool, steady. How much? I asked. She hesitated, then said a number higher than I'd expected. I wrote it down on a receipt with a pen that barely worked. Numbers calm me. They behave. I'm sorry, she said again. I know, I said, and I meant I know you're sorry now. When the timer beeped, I jumped. I turned it off. Too hard. I have to go, I said. Don't contact me again. I hung up before she could respond. My hands shook after. Not during, after. I sat at the table and stared at the receipt, at the crooked ink, at the evidence that this wasn't just emotional. It was financial, intentional. I thought about all the times I'd clipped coupons, all the nights I'd said no to takeout, all the quiet compromises that added up. I felt embarrassed, then furious for feeling embarrassed. That evening, Denise came by with soup I didn't ask for. We ate standing up. She listened while I talked too fast. This is bigger, she said when I finished. You know that, right? I nodded. I did. Later, after Ellie was asleep, I scanned the receipt and saved it to the folder. Taxes. Still taxes. I unplugged the scanner, plugged it back in. Useless movement. Before bed, I stood in the hallway and listened to the house breathe. I didn't miss him. I missed who I thought I was. I turned off the last light, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of the dark. The next few weeks blurred together in a way that felt both fast and endless. I kept thinking I would wake up and feel different. Stronger. Certain. Instead, every morning arrived with the same quiet weight, settling on my chest before I even opened my eyes. I started keeping a notebook in my bag, not for journaling, just lists, dates, times, little notes like ATM withdrawal Tuesday or transfer didn't clear. I wrote them down, crossed them out, rewrote them cleaner. I hated messy handwriting. It felt like losing control twice. Sometimes I caught myself apologizing. To the bank teller, to the lawyer. Once to a barista who handed me the wrong coffee. I stopped mid-sentence and stared at her, embarrassed. She looked back, confused. I tipped extra. At night, after Ellie slept, I sat on the couch with the TV on mute. I watched people talk without sound. Their mouths moved confidently. I wondered what that felt like. Ethan tried again. New number this time. New tone. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail anyway. Calm. Reasonable. He talked about mistakes, about forgiveness, about how things like this didn't need to involve anyone else. I deleted it, then retrieved it, then deleted it again. I met with the lawyer twice more. She spoke slowly, like I might crack if she moved too fast. She explained terms I wrote down even though I already understood them. Separation, disclosure, protective steps. I nodded a lot, took notes I'd never read again. One afternoon I realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. That scared me. I sat in the car afterward, gripping the steering wheel, waiting for the fear to come back. It didn't. Instead, there was something else. Focus. I called the sheriff's office, hung up before it rang, tried again. My voice sounded steady when I asked who I should speak to about financial concerns related to fraud. I repeated the sentence twice. It sounded real both times. When I hung up, I sat very still. I counted my breaths. In, out, in, out. At home, I found Ellie's sock behind the couch. Just one. I held it for a second, then put it in the laundry basket where it didn't belong yet. Small order felt better than none. That evening, Denise came over again. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where the money had been. I traced a mark in the wood with my finger. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," I said, then corrected myself. "I think I will be." She smiled, soft. "That's enough for now." After she left, I checked the locks. Twice. I made sure the windows were closed. I turned the porch light on earlier than necessary. Before bed, I opened the notebook, added one more line. A simple one. Tomorrow. I closed it, set it straight on the table, parallel to the edge, and for the first time since the grocery store, I slept without dreaming. The knock came on a Monday, late enough that I thought about not answering. I checked the clock, checked the door camera, adjusted the collar of my sweater like this was an interview and not my life. 2 officers stood on the porch, neutral faces, hands visible, polite. I opened the door anyway. They explained why they were there in careful sentences, financial discrepancies, reports that matched patterns, names I recognized, dates I had written down. I nodded too much, apologized once, stopped myself. They asked if they could come in. I moved a stack of mail off the chair like it mattered. We sat at the kitchen table. Again, I kept my hands folded because when I didn't, they wandered. To the scratch in the wood, to the edge, to nothing. I told them what I knew, what I had, what I suspected. I slid the folder across the table. Taxes. Still taxes. One officer flipped pages slowly. The other watched me breathe. I felt ridiculous for noticing. They asked about Ethan, where he was staying, how often he contacted me, whether I felt threatened. No, I said, then paused. Not like that. When they left, the house felt smaller, quieter, like it was holding its breath with me. Ethan called that night, from his real number this time. I didn't answer. He left a message anyway. He sounded tired, sincere. He said words like misunderstanding and blown out of proportion. He said my name like it still belonged to him. I deleted the message, then stood in the kitchen staring at the fridge until the motor kicked on. The next day, I met the lawyer again. She explained next steps, possible outcomes, timeframes that felt both short and endless. I asked if I was doing the right thing. She didn't answer right away. That helped. "You're doing the necessary thing," she said. On the drive home, I pulled over for no reason. Just stopped. Sat there with my hands on the wheel, staring at a patch of trees I'd passed 1,000 times. I cried then, quiet, fast, like I was late for something. At home, I vacuumed the living room. Slowly, I went over the same spot 3 times. I found a coin under the couch and set it on the counter, then moved it to the drawer, then back to the counter again. Ellie came home with a drawing, 3 stick figures holding hands. One was taller, one had a dress, one had a backpack. "Is Daddy coming back?" she asked. I hesitated. That hurt more than anything else. "I don't know," I said, "but I'm here." She nodded, accepted it. Kids are better at living in the now than adults ever are. That evening, Denise texted me a single line. They picked him up. I stared at the words until they blurred. Relief didn't come. Neither did joy. just a strange, hollow calm. Later, alone, I stood in the bathroom and brushed my teeth too long. My gums bled. I rinsed. Tried again, gentler. I thought about Ethan in a room without windows. About choices. About consequences. About all the times I'd chosen silence to keep things smooth. I rinsed the sink, wiped it dry. Before bed, I checked the locks. Once, only once this time. I turned off the light. And for the first time, the quiet didn't feel like waiting. It didn't feel like an ending when the papers were signed. No music. No sudden light. Just a quiet room with beige walls and a pen that scratched when I pressed too hard. I signed my name slower than necessary, like the pace might change the meaning. When it was done, the lawyer slid the folder away. Closed. Final. "You're officially divorced," she said. I nodded, stood up, sat back down. My legs needed a second to remember what came next. Outside, the air was sharp, clean. I walked to my car and didn't turn the key right away. I checked my reflection in the rearview mirror. Same face, slightly different eyes. At home, I put the kettle on and forgot about it. It screamed. I turned it off. Poured the water anyway. The tea tasted thin. I drank it. Life didn't rush back in. It crept. Weeks passed, then months. Ellie adjusted faster than I did. Kids do. She stopped asking when Daddy was coming back and started asking if we could paint her room yellow. We did. I got paint on my hair. She laughed like it was the point. I sold the house, bought a smaller one with creaky stairs and too much light. I fixed the porch bulb myself. It felt important. Some nights I still reached for my phone to tell Ethan something small, a joke, a detail. Then I remembered. I set the phone down, waited for the urge to pass. It always did. The case closed quietly. No dramatic headlines, just consequences. Accounts frozen, assets seized. A sentence that sounded heavier on paper than it probably felt to him. I didn't attend anything. I didn't need to see him smaller to feel larger. One morning, at the library, Ellie ran off to the children's section and left me standing by a shelf I hadn't meant to browse. A man reached past me for a book and apologized too much. We smiled. Nothing happened. That felt like something. Later, driving home, I laughed at myself. Not bitter, just honest. I wasn't healed. I was healing. There's a difference. I still had moments. In the grocery store, in the cereal aisle, milk options staring back at me like a dare. I breathed through them. Put one in the cart, moved on. On the anniversary of the day it all broke, I took the folder labeled taxes out of the drawer. I stared at it, then shredded it page by page. The machine jammed halfway through. I fixed it, finished the job. That night, I stood at the window and watched the porch light glow steady against the dark. No flicker. No waiting. I thought about the woman I was in that store, holding a phone that wasn't hers. I wanted to tell her something. Not that it would be okay, just that she would be enough. I turned off the light and slept. I didn't tell this story to prove I was strong. I wasn't. Not at first. I told it because there was a moment when I stood in a grocery store holding a phone that wasn't mine, and I thought my life had already ended. It hadn't. It was just changing shape. If you're in that moment now, the quiet one, where nothing has exploded yet but you can feel the ground shifting under your feet, this isn't a warning. It's permission. You don't have to be brave today. You don't have to decide everything tonight. You don't even have to forgive. You just have to stay honest with yourself. That's enough to start. The rest comes later, slower than you want. But it comes.